Hi, I'm Mike McLean. Welcome to the Short Circuit podcast brought to you by Swift Aircraft. In this series, we'll be chatting with a variety of people from all walks of life, but who all have one thing in common: aviation. We'll discuss how and why they got into aviation, what or who inspired them, and what they would say to encourage young people to get involved. Flight fascinates many of us, and our guests will explain why they are compelled to look to the sky. Today's chat is with MSP Brian Whittle. Former Olympian and international athlete, he's probably best known for his exploits in the Team GB 400 metres relay squad back in the 80s and 90s. So what's that got to do with aviation? Well, I'll let Brian explain all that, but before we start, I have a request. Please remember to click the like button, share with friends and colleagues, and subscribe. This really does help us get the word out. So, with that in mind, here goes. So, good afternoon, Mr. Brian Whittle. Welcome to the Short Circuit podcast. And I'm going to ask you question number one in the traditional manner, and that is, who are you and what's your role linked to aviation?
My name is Brian Whittle. I am a South of Scotland member of the Scottish Parliament. I am the Shadow Minister for Business and Economic Development and Tourism.
Wow. Okay. So we're in with the heavy hitters today. It's always good to know. So, aviation, as I mentioned to you earlier, I heard you speaking in Holyrood Parliament about aviation in your territory. So that's what attracted me to getting hold of you. So we'll follow on with our standard routine, and that is, so what got you involved with aircraft or interest in aviation back in the day?
Number one, Prestwick is in my constituency.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I used to live right next to the airport
Right.
in Moncton. And I used to go down to the airport all the time because there used to be an observation deck with amusements as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yep.
that was a wee day out for us. I go all the way back to having as a youngster, when my dad crossing the road onto the playing fields in Moncton and watching the inaugural flights of Concorde in 1969.
Wow.
Prestwick's been, part of it for all of that time. So, obviously I have a work interest
Mm-hmm.
in the airport, but I have a personal one as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Moncton, for those that don't know, is literally on the fence of Prestwick Airport, which
Correct.
is one of the longest runways, I think, in the UK. And
It is. And back
it's
in the
only
day, it was one of the ones that it never fogged up. So,
that's the
uh,
thing. That was the big secret, is that
yeah,
if the rest of the UK was hit with fog, Prestwick could fill up with all this exotic stuff coming across the Atlantic.
correct. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, that's marvelous stuff. Okay, so you've been in and around it since you're a kid, and you're used to the noise and the smells and everything of a
Yeah,
commercial airport, and also a naval airfield as well, wasn't it?
it is. Yeah, it is.
HMS Gannet. So how did you get started in your current role? I mean, you're in the Scottish Parliament. So
Yeah.
how did that all happen, and how does that relate to aviation in general, or specifically to you today?
Well, it does. I get into politics by accident,
Hmm.
and which I'm quite happy to go into if you want, and specifically doesn't relate to aviation directly,
Hmm.
uh, apart from the fact that Prestwick Airport was part of my responsibility in terms of the constituency that I
Hmm.
looked after the area that I looked after. I mean, when I get into politics, just it was, in fact, Ruth, I was speaking at a conference,
Hmm.
and just after the independence referendum in 2014,
Right.
and not a politician, not a member of a political party, but I was asked to do a speech at a conference, and I did. And I was very balanced because I had a chip on both shoulders. Um, I was very very disillusioned with the way in which politicians behaved themselves during the 2014 election and the way it carved my country in two.
Mhm.
And I used a lot of expressions like, the desire to be a politician should ban you from life from ever being one. Don't vote for them, it just encourages them, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Ruth Davison followed me onto the stage. I'd never met the lady before. And her first words were, wouldn't he make a good politician?
Hmm.
And at the time, not knowing where my political allegiances lie, obviously they would understand that I believed in the Union,
Mhm.
given that I ran for Great Britain and, you know, I was speaking during the referendum on, what would happen to Scottish sport in an independent country and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But I knew John Scott, who was an MSP at the time. He was the silent assassin,
Mhm.
and basically Ruth set him up on me and asked me
So,
to stand.
right, okay. And so for those who don't know this part of the world, so Prestwick Airport and the industries and the stuff going on around, including the local college. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
big influence in your constituency. I mean,
massive. I mean, I think we're missing a huge trick here. I mean, I think Prestwick is hugely important to the local economy.
mhm,
A lot of really good engineering works surround Prestwick Airport. We have Ayrshire College and also University of West of Scotland are really good educational establishments that serve those sort of engineering apprenticeship type and trade type places, but not to the extent they could and should.
mhm,
So I think that this is why I'm immersed, if you like, in this whole area at the moment because I think Prestwick could be such a huge hub for industry, huge hub for aviation actually. And at the moment, I don't. There's a disconnect in my view with the delivery of the personnel that's required because there's a shortage of aviation engineers and engineers in general, and all companies around Prestwick are saying this.
mhm.
And we've got colleges who are prepared to deliver on that, but at the moment that connection's not been properly made. So that's where my current drive is.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole cluster of companies around Prestwick. So it's not just a commercial airport launching passengers off on holiday,
Mm.
but you've got a lot of cargo stuff. There's
Yeah.
transit stuff coming in. I believe there's quite a bit of military activity around there as well with the new refueling,
Yeah. The
something like
US,
that.
the biggest income for Prestwick Airport at the moment is the US military.
Right.
I mean, there is some cargo going through Prestwick, but in my view, it should be a massive cargo hub,
Hmm.
and I think that's the future of Prestwick. As well as a maintenance facility and maybe a reconditioning, recycling facility, aircraft recycling.
Hmm.
And at the moment it's owned by the Scottish government, and there's been several attempts to buy it back from the Scottish government to do exactly that. And for me, that's where that future of that airport sits. And at the moment there seems to be resistance to that. There's a lethargy. It's just not moving in the direction it should.
Do you think that is possibly, without getting into the politics of it, do you think that's also possibly down to a lack of understanding and appreciation of the aviation industry? Because personally, I've found that there are those of us in the industry, and that's our jobs, and that's what we do. But I think for the
Yeah.
general public, there's people have lost touch with aviation. I've said this many times. Usually, the only interaction people have is they get on a plane, they go on holiday, they come back, and that's it. And they're not interested. We don't have air shows like we used to do.
Yeah.
Airports are no longer accessible. You mentioned earlier on a viewing gallery. I can remember those, but today such a totally alien concept for most airports, where you
Yeah.
can rock up, have a cup of tea, sit and watch the planes without having to go through the full body scan and all this sort of business. And I think it's pushed the public further away.
I think you're right. I mean, I was in the Air Training Corps,
Hmm.
and I remember selling programs at the Prestwick Air Show.
Yeah.
Years and years, more years ago than I care to remember, more than 40 years ago.
We won't go
Um,
down that road.
yeah. You made a happy man very old there.
Sorry.
And so you're right. I think there is a lack of perception. And why would I mean I've learned more about the runnings of airports in the last 8 years
Mm,
than ever. I mean, why would people know? I've been down there recently with in the Ryanair shed when you've got they're doing full servicing of major planes and
mm,
seeing them taking the engines out, and I've seen all of that and what it takes to keep a plane safely in the air and all that sort of massively interesting to me.
mhm.
Um, but why would the public know that? Because the bottom line is, you go along, you get on a plane, you get off at, Marbella the other side, you put your hat on and you get sunburnt and come home.
Yeah.
That's generally how people interact with aviation. So why would you?
Mm,
But I think because it's such a key element of business down our way, we have to be cognizant of the needs of that airport, because the worst thing in the world could happen is if it failed.
mhm. Yeah. I mean, the thing that gets me is that the opportunities for jobs in aviation in general is massive, and yet we're struggling to get people into that industry, and it's everything from engineers and pilots, which is what everybody immediately thinks of, but you're down to fashion design, artists, writers,
Yeah,
photographers, cleaners, specialist cleaners. Um, Next door to Prestwick, you've got NATS, the Air Traffic Control
yeah,
Service, which is a huge facility. And have you been in there yet? Because if you haven't,
yes, I have.
it's incredible.
Yeah,
That's somewhere
needs
I'm supposed.
upgraded, but yeah.
Yeah, well, everything needs upgrading all the time. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So well, on that point then, so oh, I forgot to mention we've got people like Spirit Aero. I think they're still
But
down
Aero
there.
Systems, yeah.
Yeah,
I
I mean
think
they're a
just
massive employer.
yeah, I've been down. I've been in their place quite a few times. In fact, I mean they don't even make the wings. They make the tips of the wings.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a plane flying around somewhere where the inside of it has my autograph on the inside of the wing, because they allowed me to tighten up one of the nuts.
All right.
So if
Well,
it comes down, just get my autograph against it so they could blame
they-
somebody.
they'll track you down. They'll track you down. I'm sure they went through the QA and QC procedures and made
Yeah.
sure that it was all checked afterwards. So,
Make sure
so
they took it back out again.
yeah, we got the
There
disclaimer
is
in there.
I've got my autographs on the inside of a wing somewhere. But no, I mean there's massive engineering works around about there. I think you're right in terms of employment ability.
Mhm,
I think there's huge capability down there. They're when I was down seeing Ryanair, they would like to build another two hangars,
mhm.
but
Right.
they cannot get the engineers up to do it. And yet we have unemployment quite high in East Ayrshire.
Mhm.
And we have colleges who want to run the apprenticeship programs,
Right.
and yet it's just they're not, it's not. I don't want to get political here, but bottom
Yeah.
line is we need more apprentices.
Yeah. I mean, okay. So, but this isn't party politics. This is real politics. So, this is part of the reason for this whole podcast series is to try and raise awareness amongst other people that aviation is an industry which used to be massive in the UK and is hanging on by a thread. I mean, we've got some fantastic innovation coming through and all that sort of thing, but compared to what it was 30, 40 years ago, we are struggling. And if we can't build a couple of new hangars because we don't have sufficient engineers and engineering skills, that's an indictment. That
I
I
agree.
I wasn't aware of that shortcoming there, and that surprised me, and it's disappointed me actually, because the same arguments and the same concerns I would say apply across the country as a whole, and just getting hold of the right people in the right place seems to be difficult.
Yeah.
Apprenticeships, I think it's very easy for people to forget about the hands-on skills, and
Mm.
everything's on a computer now, and that's it. You know, it seems to be so simple, and yet you still need somebody with a hammer and a spanner, and at the end of the day, to put something together and make it work. And
Yeah.
I think that gets left behind, which brings us on. So, well, I've got two things there. So, developments in general and developments specifically at Prestwick. So, you Ryanair looking to expand. What else do you anticipate will come to Prestwick over the next 10, 15 years?
Well, there's potentially an awful lot.
Hmm.
I've known of a couple of bids for the airport, and I've seen the plans of what they wanted to do around development of a hub, of a cargo hub, development of they want a new business park. They want to bring, a lot of the sort of space engineering down there.
Hmm.
I know they wanted to do that. I know they wanted to open up there's a disused railway line at the back. They wanted to open that up and bring a Spurs directly into the airport.
Wow.
Um, I was trying when they asked me about what was available. I think the just-in-time economy, where we have seafood
Hmm.
business up in Scotland, but they transport it down south to fly it out to abroad. So the potential to have a cool hangar where it comes out of Scotland is massive in terms of recycling, aircraft recycling. I think it's going to become a bigger and bigger and bigger industry.
Hmm.
Hydrogen powered planes, come
Yep.
on. That's coming, and I'm part of the cross party group on aviation, and we've been looking at that quite heavily. We already have some hydrogen planes flying in the UK.
Hmm.
We have a major airline who I met with them not that long ago saying they're looking at within 12 years having 480 hydrogen powered planes.
Wow.
You
Okay.
know, I mean, to me, I don't know how you do that because I don't know how you build that number of planes, let alone power them on hydrogen. I know that there was talk of powering the airport
Hmm.
with the renewables. The whole this whole decarbonisation of the aeronautical industry. I know Glasgow are looking at that as well. They're looking at how they can use hydrogen to power it. So I think the way in which some parts of society and politicians are trying to say we have to stop people moving about. I think we have to allow people to move about cleaner.
Yes. Yes.
So that's it. My drive's towards that rather than stop people. I mean, there's no. I mean, I've been lucky in my life to get around the world, and I don't think we should be stopping people doing that. I think we should be finding better and cleaner ways of doing that. And I think encouraging that kind of innovation is where we need to be. And Prestwick's really unique, and it's got space.
Hmm.
And by space, I don't mean up the way, I mean round about it. It's got the ability to expand into all sorts of areas. We've got a lot of space around Prestwick Airport,
Hmm.
and I think the opportunity to develop a real engineering hub, if you like, a
Yeah.
future innovation type hub is real, and it's something that should be pursued vigorously. And that's what I'm trying to get the wake the governments up to that.
Hmm. Great. Offline, we should have a conversation about sort of sustainable flight and that sort of thing. And if you're on a cross-party group, I know you're based in the Scottish Parliament, but if you ever get involved with your colleagues down south, you should come and visit us at
Used
Swift
to.
Aircraft. Yeah, well, yeah, okay. Let's not get into that. Just
Not quite sure how easy that'll be now, but I definitely used to.
yes, it's been
All
a
change,
it's been
all
a
change.
it's been a bit dramatic few days, hasn't it? But anyway, right, moving on from that.
Slightly seismic.
Yes, slightly slightly. I like that. That's a very I'm going to put that in a t-shirt. Um, there's two things that just two little myths that I have heard but I've never seen written down anywhere. And there was one there was talk of using Prestwick as a horizontal launch platform for space.
Yeah,
So I believe that
yeah.
that's a reality. Oh well, not reality at the moment, but it's a possibility. The other one that really intrigued me and got me quite excited was somehow extending the runway because you're right next to the beach, and we're looking at seaplanes and amphibians and bringing them back to Prestwick. because there's been I've read quite a bit in literature about using large seaplanes, and at the moment the issue with seaplanes is they can fly and you can carry an awful lot of stuff in them, but handling them at the other end, at each end of the journey, is difficult. Whereas if you could taxi straight from the sea onto the runway or the taxiway into a proper airport where everything is designed for aircraft, that sounds like it could be a very good idea. And have you come across that rumor at all?
You're not. I would have to give up some of the Royal Troon Golf Course to do that. I'm not so sure. I'm happy with that. I'm like,
A traffic light
so just
system would
behave yourself. Listen. I'm all for advancement, but leave my golf course alone. I
and
mean,
there is the
to
real
be fair, I
fault.
haven't heard that.
Uh,
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that. I've got to be honest with you, but
uh,
I mean, you're right. I mean, the airport's only 300 yards from the beach,
yeah, yeah, it's
probably. You know, I mean, that would be eminently doable. Whether it becomes financially viable to
mhm.
do that is open to question.
Yeah, because you
But
get dual carriageway in the way as well.
it's eminently doable.
Yeah.
These things are all doable.
There's a
But
rumor. We've started a rumor now. That's it. It's going to be like
you started a
wildfire.
rumor, and let's put it this way: the Scottish government won't do it. They currently own the airport.
Hmm.
I mean, it is supposedly up for sale, but they've been resisted selling it for some reason.
Hmm.
Um, and it would be up to the new owners to whether or not that's something they looked at.
Yeah.
But you've got all the members at Royal Troon to deal with, and don't fancy that.
That's going to be, yeah, it's a challenge. That's a challenge. So moving on to the younger end of the spectrum then. So STEM and STEAM activity. So you've mentioned the college and the University of
Mhm.
West of
Yeah.
Scotland. Um, I mean, is there anything that can be done, or anything more that can be done in those particular establishments and in more in general, to try and catch young people's imagination? Is there anything that springs to your mind as how we can get STEM focused on, or at least to take into account, aeronautics, aviation, aerospace, that sort of thing?
Okay. Are you sitting comfortably?
I am.
Because
Go
this is
for it.
my topic. This is my topic. Um, I mean, the impact of STEM has been stubbornly static for
Hmm.
far too long in our education system. And when you look at things like, for example, female into STEM,
Hmm.
it's still sitting at about 12% of the total.
Wow, I didn't realize it's that low. Okay.
So we're missing an opportunity here.
Hmm.
And one of the things, and to cut a very long story short, I think what we need to be doing is weaving that economy into our education system in terms of we need to be highlighting much more especially during school years, the potential for a career in engineering or in the green economy and actually aviation is sitting within the green economy now and all the innovation that's required in that. I had for example, we don't do that. I think the careers advice that we give in schools or that we should continually give in schools is not there. So, for example, I had a group of 15, 16-year-olds in Parliament and I was in the chamber where we're chatting away, and I was chatting away, that one of the things I'm really interested in economy is the green economy.
Hmm.
And I said, do you understand what the green economy is? And they went, is that planting trees?
Okay.
Okay, so
This,
that's 15, 16-year-olds who are
right.
probably started to hone in on what they want to do for the rest of their lives, not understanding that we're talking engineering and biology and chemistry and soil and
Hmm.
all those things
Yeah.
that they have a huge, massive career in going forward. And we're talking about that. We're talking about these careers going forward as a massive part of our economy in the future. And yet, those who will be delivering that economy don't know about it.
Hmm. That
So,
that's
yeah,
disappointing if that's as far as we've got.
well, I think also in terms of when we talk about engineers, there's still this perception of engineers in a greasy old dirty overall. whereas engineers now sit in front of a laptop
Yep.
and do design work and all that kind of stuff. So it's a completely different concept. So I think we haven't marketed or sold these careers at an early age within the school system as options.
Hmm.
And I think opening, that's why I think open university, brilliant. People, if university is the direction of travel you want to go in, fantastic. But I think we've cut the further education system far too far back in terms of apprenticeships, as we've talked about before. In terms of short-term courses where we maybe you're moving careers, we've cut all that back. So the direction, if that's the direction you want to go in, the routes to get there are fewer.
Hmm.
We're not weaving that sort of economy through our education system. So, and that's as small a nutshell as I can put that in.
No,
But
no, that's
this
fine.
is actually where my whole stance in developing the economy sits. Is within the education environment.
So, on a practical level, what can be done in the short term to raise the profile and to change the perceptions? Have you got any silver bullets, or
Yeah,
what do we
I
what
mean,
do we do? What do we do?
there's lots of little things we can do.
Hmm.
I think that, for example, I was down with my committee. I'm in the Economy and Fair Work Committee. We were down at Preston Airport a couple of months ago, and had a complete tour of the whole engineering works through all, and we saw for first hand what we do. And I think that education outside of the classroom
Yeah.
is something we could be doing. I mean, they've got some. I mean, aerospace, which they've got fantastic education facilities down there where we could sit, where we could do some of that practical stuff, and we could sit and do some of that education out of the classroom type stuff. We should be weaving. We could have engineering works coming into the schools. I think they should. I think they should have. They should be having coming in with presentations and video and PowerPoint presentations talking about what's available and what they're looking for. I think we need to start integrating our further education with school education, so that there is a much more seamless route to get from
Mhm.
where they are to where they could be. It's one of the you have to be able to touch it to see. You
Yeah.
have to be able to see it to do
I'm,
it.
I'm
And I
on
think
that
that's
point.
one of the
I'm
things.
with you 100%. I mean, for me, site visits by schools to the industry. I mean, when I was at school, if we did go and visit somebody, which wasn't that often, but occasionally you get out, it's a day trip, so it's always exciting. But then you get to see stuff that you've never seen before. You get to understand something that you never understood. And the other thing that you mentioned of industry going to schools, again, I think is key in that just having somebody turn up for half an hour with something for the youngsters to look at, to hold, to touch, not necessarily having to do death by PowerPoint. You don't have to do that. You can show some good videos and all the rest of it, but having a
Yeah.
few pictures and something practical, something that people can, the young people can get engaged with, the impact of that can be really, really strong. But often there's resistance either from the employers to release the time and the effort to go and engage with the education, and there's also just a huge inertia with schools and colleges to go to visit
Yeah.
the industry because of I've got to do 39 risk assessments, and it's expensive and it's very difficult now, and you're just thinking this shouldn't be this hard for somebody to come and have a look around a factory. It should not be that hard to take a dozen kids around. It frustrates me, as you can see. So I'll get off my high horse because it's not all about me. So,
Well, that's the journey I'm on just now. That's the journey I'm on, trying
no,
to look at the practical ways in which we can tackle exactly that, the lack of people into STEM and the lack of sort of the engineers, trades, all the things you're talking about there. That's the journey I'm on.
right. Time has shot on and the clock's looking at me. So I'm going to ask you our signature question, which is the biggest one of the day. But before I do that, I'm going to take this opportunity to ask the listeners to like, subscribe, and share this podcast around and help spread the word. And that's, of course, the big question is, what's your favorite plane and why?
Oh, cheer. Um, well, I was Air Training Corps.
Hmm. Likewise.
And I get I'm very into sort of military aircraft.
Hmm.
And I could go back to the older. I mean, I loved. I used to have the model aircraft, on my ceiling. You
Hmm.
meet the aircraft. So I would go with probably the Phantom, just
Right.
monstrous plane. But the F-22 Raptor is just insane plane.
It is.
So yeah, I'm allowed two. I'll go with two
No, no, no. You only
of
got one.
three
You got to
F-14 Tomcat.
Tomcat. See, you're going for the big fast jets, but you got to choose one. You're only
Yeah.
allowed one. Go on. Which one's it going to be?
Okay. I'll go with. 'Cause at one point I was going to be I was going down the route of fighter pilot. I'm going to go for the F-22 Raptor.
You got to go for the Raptor. Okay. Okay. So,
Yeah.
have you seen one in the flesh?
Yes, I have.
And it made your teeth rattle, and you
Oh,
stood there.
just what the thing can do is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Absolutely insane.
defying the laws of physics, I think it's
Yeah, absolutely.
fantastic.
It's,
Okay. So, Brian, thank you
mm.
very much for coming on the short circuit. We've got your plane. That's going to go on the virtual control tower wall on our cork board. I'll send you the link so you can see all of that. So, MSP, advocate for STEM and for the Prestwick Aviation Hub. Thank you very much for your time today, and I look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to talk to you, Mike.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So that was Brian Whittle. This podcast doesn't do politics with a capital P, but hearing the opinion of those with access to power and getting our message of supporting aviation and STEM across to them is an opportunity not to be missed. I think you'll agree that Brian has passion and drive for the subject, so that's not a bad thing. Time will tell if aviation in the Prestwick area will continue to grow, but it could come down to a battle between flying planes or flying golf balls. So, as always, thanks for listening and fly safe. You have been listening to The Short Circuit, presented by Mike McLean and sponsored by Swift Aircraft with the hashtag Inspiring Aviation. This has been a Zoom Spike production.